And so he literally was like, you get it. What's going on here? And I was like, well, thank you, sir. And when we submitted that night to do operations, to go out and do a direct action mission, what do you think he said?
Approved, yeah.
Approved. Here's a cool thing to do, and it's a smart thing to do. You got your little agenda, whatever it may be, and then your boss has his agenda, whatever that may be. Guess what the best thing to do is? Support your boss's agenda. That's now, is there a chance that your boss's agenda is so far removed in the direction where you believe you should be going with your team that it makes no sense whatsoever? There is a chance, but generally speaking, in any organization, the subordinate organizations are trying to move in the same direction as the elevated parts of the organization. You know, there's no division in a company that's like, oh, we're over here trying to lose money. Yeah. There's no division in a company saying, hey, we're trying to treat our people badly. That's not happening. So if my boss has an agenda that's a little bit different, I might make adjustments to my agenda so that we come in a little bit cleaner. So here's an example. When we got to Ramadi, we weren't working for my commanding officer at first. We were working for another commanding officer for like 2 weeks. So that's the way they do big, what do they call it? Relief in place. Yeah. The subordinate units replace the other subordinate units before the senior leaders get replaced. So I roll in there and I'm working for the CO, the commanding officer of SEAL Team 1. And I know him, but I don't know him well. And one of my guys who I was friends with, who's a SEAL, who had been there with SEAL Team 1 and working for that commanding officer, he gives me this piece of intel. He says, hey, this commanding officer at SEAL Team 1, he loves interpreters. He loves Arabic culture. He thinks our interpreters are so important. And so you might want to talk about the interpreters a little bit. So I said, cool. My commanding officer from SEAL Team 3 and the commanding officer from SEAL Team 1 came out for a brief from me when I turned over. I gave probably a 10-slide brief. I think 6 of the slides were individually profiling each one of the interpreters that we had and talking about the importance of interpreters and talking about how they bring this dynamic capability to the battlefield and all this stuff. And it was all true. It was all true. It was really smart. It was also the most full support for the commanding officer from SEAL Team 1's agenda.
Yeah.
And so he literally was like, you get it. What's going on here? And I was like, well, thank you, sir. And when we submitted that night to do operations, to go out and do a direct action mission, what do you think he said?
Approved, yeah.
Approved. He didn't need to see anything else from me.
Yeah.
I aligned with what he was doing. It made sense. It wasn't like he was saying, hey, what we should do is, go out and wear freaking orange strobe lights on our heads. He wasn't saying that. He wouldn't say that. He noticed a particular capability that we had. He realized the power of it. And I said, oh, that's a great capability. I agree. Boom. Here's what I'm going to brief you on. Sure, I'm going to tell you our capabilities. I'm going to tell you how many snipers we have. But you know what else we have? We've got the interpreters. We did a great turnover from your guys. They gave us a great turnover. And that meant we were aligned. And that meant we did a bunch of operations for that commanding officer. So by the time my commanding officer took over, we had already done a bunch of ops.
Right.
And he felt comfortable with what we were doing, and boom, we continued. There was no lag, there was no gap. So I think that's an important thing. Like you said, you want to understand other people's agendas. The common example I give with this is, you got Leif and you got Seth in Charlie Platoon and Delta Platoon. And if we only had 10 sets of night vision, both Leif and Seth are going to want all that night vision. They're going to want them all. And they're going to be pulling for all of them. Each of them are going to come to me separately and be like, hey, Jock, I think my platoon would really be better with the night vision. And, Seth comes in, hey, bro, I really think we'd be better. And that's what they're going to say. And so you're going to have a natural, positive tension in your organization of people that are fighting for their own departments, divisions, platoons, whatever, teams. And that's okay. As long as they don't undermine, backstab, lie in order to improve their own position.
Yeah.
If Leif comes and makes a case and says, hey, Jocko, you know what? The types of operations we're doing here in Charlie Platoon, we're doing mostly night operations. We're going out on these direct action missions at night. Seth's doing overwatches during the day. It just doesn't make sense. Okay, that's a legitimate case. If Seth comes to me and says, hey, you know what? When we maneuver into our overwatch positions, if we can be blacked out, we're going to be way more clandestine. Once you're doing Leif's doing direct actions, but guess what? Direct action's loud and they're making noise anyway, so they might as well use it. Let's see. These are, by the way, false arguments. This didn't happen. But if it happened, they're just presenting cases.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Now, if Leif comes to me and says, you know, Seth's guys didn't even sight in their lasers, they don't deserve, and that was a lie, then we got a problem. He's undermining. It's a lie. So what I have to do is sort through the natural tension that is going to exist, and then I have to present alignment to the team and say, hey, here's the decision I made. What we're going to do is we're going to do a month of night ops, a month of day ops, and you guys are going to flip-flop. And that's what we're doing, whatever. So, but I've got to align those agendas because those agendas are going to exist. And agendas are okay. You mentioned this, that agendas can start going off course. They can only go so far off course if you're ultimately aligned. If we're not ultimately aligned, cool. Now they will go off course and they will never touch again.
Yeah.
You know, one thing that I noticed in losing guys and losing friends was that we don't have a good protocol in America. We don't have, you know, in other countries, they have a protocol that they're going to follow. If someone dies, here's the protocol. This is what you're going to do.